In the shadow of a silvery moon, where the whispers of ancient trees mingled with the haunting echoes of a forgotten past, a mysterious energy stirred beneath the velvet sky. The forest, alive with secrets and draped in a delicate mist, beckoned those who dared to listen. Its dense canopy cradled the night, letting through only shards of pale light that danced upon the dew-kissed undergrowth. This was no ordinary woodland. It was a living tapestry of supernatural wonder and whispered enchantments, a realm where destiny intertwined with desire and ancient curses held the power to reshape lives. At the heart of this enigmatic world lay a pack, a family bound not merely by blood, but by a deep, unspoken bond forged in the fires of fate. They were more than mere creatures of instinct. They were guardians of a legacy, intertwined with a magic as old as time itself. In the stillness of the night, their howls rose in a mournful chorus, a symphony of longing and loss that resonated across the barren clearings and echoed into the unknown. Every note carried with it the weight of countless generations, the dreams of a community that had weathered storms of sorrow and triumph alike. Amidst this shadowed congregation stood Kia, a solitary figure whose luminous eyes betrayed a world of hidden emotions. Her presence was both fragile and fierce, a delicate flower blooming defiantly in the harsh night. For Kia, the pack had always been a double-edged sword, a sanctuary of belonging, yet a crucible of expectations. She moved silently, a wraith, among her kin, whose inner world was as tumultuous as the swirling mists around her. Her heart, heavy with the weight of unspoken truths, yearned for a love that could transcend the darkness, for a connection so profound it could illuminate even the bleakest nights. And then there was Riven, the pack's enigmatic alpha, a man whose very presence seemed to command the elements. His eyes, dark and stormy like the night before a tempest, held secrets that could shatter dreams and mend broken spirits. Riven's reputation was as formidable as the legends whispered about him. He was both protector and tormentor, a figure of raw, magnetic intensity, whose every action was tinged with an air of irresistible danger. The bond between Kia and Riven was not simply a matter of chance. It was a force of nature, an inexorable pull that had woven their destinies together from the moment they first crossed paths. As the night deepened, the natural world came alive with sounds that stirred both awe and trepidation. The rustling of leaves, the distant call of an unseen creature, and the soft murmur of a nearby stream formed a delicate backdrop, a natural symphony that set the stage for what was to come. The forest seemed to hold its breath, suspended in a timeless moment, where every shadow and every flicker of light carried a promise of mystery. In this delicate balance between beauty and foreboding, every heartbeat echoed like a drum, calling forth memories of forgotten lore and the inexorable march of destiny. Within this setting, the pack gathered in a clearing that served as a sacred arena for their rites and traditions. Flickering torches cast elongated shadows upon the ground, their flames dancing to the rhythm of the wind, as if trying to mimic the volatile emotions that simmered beneath the surface. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation and unspoken questions. Each member of the pack felt the weight of destiny in their bones, a silent reminder that the night was pregnant with possibilities, both wondrous and terrifying. In that charged silence, a single piercing cry shattered the stillness, drawing all eyes to the center of the gathering. It was a call that seemed to come from another realm, a summons that resonated deep within the souls of all present. This was the call of fate, the moment when every life would be irrevocably altered. For Kia, it was a moment of reckoning, i.e., time when the shadows of her past would collide with the light of her future. In that split second, as her pulse quickened and her breath hitched, the boundaries between reality and myth began to blur. Every step she had taken, every secret whispered in the dark, converged into a singular point of destiny. The wind carried with it not only the chill of the coming storm, but also the distant strains of a melody, an ancient lullaby of hope and sorrow that had echoed through the ages. It was as if the very air vibrated with the memory of lost loves and broken promises, urging those who listened to cast aside their fears and embrace the unknown. In that ethereal moment, the supernatural realm revealed itself in all its stark, raw beauty, a realm where every sound, every flicker of movement, told a story of passion, betrayal, and redemption. As the night wore on, the intricate tapestry of magic and fate began to unfold. The pack, once a simple assembly of kindred spirits, now stood on the precipice of transformation. Their destinies were interwoven with threads of ancient power and modern longing, creating a narrative that was both timeless and achingly contemporary. It was a tale that would captivate the hearts of those who dared to dream, a story that transcended the ordinary and ventured into the realm of the extraordinary. In the quiet aftermath of the cry, as the echoes of the call reverberated through the woods, Kia felt a profound shift within herself. The forest, with its murmuring secrets and spectral beauty, had imprinted upon her a sense of purpose. It was in that sacred space between fear and hope that she realized the magnitude of the bond she shared with Riven, a connection that defied explanation, a force that promised both salvation and peril. With every heartbeat, the night grew deeper, the shadows more profound, and the promise of a destiny steeped in both magic and melancholy loomed ever closer. This was not merely the beginning of another night. It was the prelude to an epic saga of love, sacrifice, and the inexorable pull of fate. And as the ancient trees swayed gently in the wind, and the distant calls of the wild echoed in the silence, a new chapter was poised to unfold, one that would forever alter the course of lives and the very fabric of the supernatural world. In the depths of the supernatural realm, where fate weaves invisible threads between souls, two figures emerged whose lives were destined to intertwine in a dance of passion, pain, and mystic power. At the center of this swirling vortex of destiny was Kia, a young woman whose very presence spoke of both fragility and unyielding strength. With porcelain skin that seemed to capture the faint luminescence of moonlight and eyes as deep and wistful as a midnight sea, Kia carried an air of quiet mystery. Her long, dark hair cascaded around her shoulders like a silken waterfall, framing a face etched with both sorrow and hope. Every delicate feature appeared to be touched by ancient magic, a beauty that was not merely skin-deep, but resonated with the scars of a life filled with solitude and hidden dreams. Kia had always been a wanderer in her own life, choosing the shadows over the spotlight. From a tender age, she learned the art of remaining unseen, of blending into the background in a world that seemed to value conformity over individuality. Raised in an environment where love and acceptance were as rare as a clear night in a storm, she cultivated an inner world rich with longing and unspoken wishes. The loneliness that haunted her was both a constant companion and a secret muse, inspiring a deep yearning to be seen, to be understood, and ultimately, to be embraced. Every heartbeat carried the echo of an unfulfilled promise, a promise that, one day, someone would look past the exterior and recognize the fierce spirit within. Her past was a tapestry woven with threads of loss and quiet rebellion. Abandoned by circumstances beyond her control, Kia had grown accustomed to the pain of isolation. Yet, within that solitude lay a reservoir of resilience that few could fathom. She clung to the belief that even in the darkest of nights, a single spark of love could ignite a flame of transformation. It was this spark that drove her to seek out connections beyond the superficial, to search for the kind of bond that transcended time and defied logic. Her heart, though bruised and battered by years of neglect, remained open, a beacon for those willing to risk the vulnerability of true intimacy. Contrasting sharply with Kia's ethereal, delicate nature was Riven, the formidable alpha whose very presence commanded both reverence and fear. Riven was a living paradox, an embodiment of raw, magnetic power tempered by an unspoken melancholy that clung to him like a second skin. His rugged features were chiseled from the very stone of ancient mountains, with a strong jawline and eyes that burned like coals in the night, reflecting a turbulent inner world. His broad shoulders and lean, muscular frame spoke of countless battles fought and victories hard won. Yet behind this imposing exterior lay the heavy burden of a curse, a malignant force that had marked him from birth. From a young age, Riven had been thrust into a role that demanded both strength and sacrifice. Trained to be the alpha, he was groomed to lead with an iron fist and a compassionate heart, a rare combination that made him both a warrior and a team guardian. However, the curse that haunted him was as much a part of him as his own flesh and blood. It was a dark, insidious affliction that corrupted his very essence, turning moments of tenderness into flashes of fury and instilling a sense of inevitable tragedy in every decision he made. This curse, whispered about in hushed tones among the pack, was the source of both his supernatural abilities and his deepest vulnerabilities. Despite the power he wielded, Riven was not immune to the loneliness that plagued him. The curse isolated him from those who might have loved him, trapping him in a cycle of self-imposed exile and perpetual torment. Yet, amidst this torment, a mysterious bond had begun to take shape, one that linked him inexorably to Kia. Their connection was not born of mere chance. It was a fated convergence of two souls that had long wandered the edges of darkness, seeking solace in each other's presence. In every stolen glance and whispered word, there lay an unspoken promise, a promise that their destinies were irrevocably intertwined. The origins of this mystical bond were shrouded in mystery, a secret even the ancient spirits of the forest could scarcely decipher. Some said it was the work of the old gods, a cosmic alignment that destined them to either redeem or ruin the pack. Others believed it was a manifestation of the chaotic energies that swirled around them, a convergence of light and shadow that defied mortal understanding. Whatever its source, the bond between Kia and Riven pulsed with a power that transcended mortal realms. It was a silent symphony, a rhythm that beat in time with the heart of the universe itself, linking them in ways that were as painful as they were beautiful. In quiet moments, when the world around them seemed to fade into the background, Kia would sense Riven's presence even before she saw him. It was as if their souls communicated in a language beyond words, a deep, resonant melody that filled the void left by their solitary pasts. For Riven, every encounter with Kia was a reminder of what he had longed for, but had believed lost forever. A chance at redemption, a glimpse of hope in a life marred by darkness. Her gentle smile, her unwavering gaze, and the raw vulnerability that she dared not hide became his sanctuary, a place where the curse could momentarily be forgotten, and where, for a fleeting second, he could imagine a life free of torment. Together, they existed in a delicate balance, each the counterpoint to the other's pain and promise. Kia's yearning for acceptance and Riven's desperate struggle against his cursed fate created a dynamic that was as electric as it was heartbreaking. Their journey, marked by moments of intense emotion and perilous uncertainty, was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the inexorable pull of destiny. In the twilight hours, as the pack gathered under the starlit sky and the night whispered secrets of old, the magical bond between Kia and Riven shone like a beacon, a silent declaration that even in the depths of despair, love could bloom, fierce and unyielding. This fated connection, born of sorrow and nurtured by hope, was more than just a tie that bound them together. It was the very essence of their existence. In a world where every shadow concealed a story and every echo carried the weight of ancient prophecies, Kia and Riven stood as living symbols of the eternal dance between light and darkness. Their bond was a promise of renewal, a pledge to defy the curse that sought to tear them apart, and a challenge to the very fabric of fate itself. And so, beneath the watchful gaze of a timeless cosmos, their saga began. A journey of love, sacrifice, and the enduring power of a bond that was written in the stars. under a twilight sky draped in twilight hues. The gathering began, a spectacle of ancient tradition and raw emotion that enveloped the pack in a charged atmosphere of both celebration and latent tension. The sacred clearing, encircled by towering, whispering pines and shrouded in a silvery mist, buzzed with the murmurs of anticipation. Flickering torches were meticulously arranged in a circular formation, their flames dancing in sync with the soft rustle of leaves, casting elongated shadows that seemed to echo the timeless rituals of the pack. The air was alive with a symphony of sounds, a blend of rhythmic drumming from distant ceremonial beats, the harmonious chorus of howls rising and falling like a heartbeat, and the gentle, almost ethereal murmurs of nature itself. The forest, acting as a silent witness, lent its mystique to the event. Every crack of a twig underfoot, every gust of wind stirring the foliage, amplified the sense that something profound was on the verge of unfolding. At the center of the clearing, members of the pack gathered in a respectful, almost reverent silence. They were adorned in ceremonial attire that spoke of generations past, a fusion of rugged tradition and supernatural elegance. The scents of burning sage and pine resin mingled in the cool night air, creating an intoxicating blend that both calmed and heightened the senses. It was a moment suspended in time, a delicate balance between the joyous exuberance of the festival and the underlying pulse of destiny that hummed through the gathered souls. Among the assembled, Kia stood at the fringes, her eyes reflective pools of quiet resolve and guarded longing. Though she had often felt like an outsider within her own pack, tonight the luminous energy of the gathering stirred something deep within her. The festivities, with their vibrant energy and ancestral call, beckoned her to abandon her self-imposed invisibility. Yet, even as she tried to blend into the crowd, an ineffable anticipation surged through her, a premonition of change that she could neither name nor resist. The moment seemed almost orchestrated by the fates. As the drumming grew louder, the pack's alpha, Riven, stepped forward with a commanding presence that immediately drew every gaze. His eyes, dark and tempestuous, scanned the circle with a measured intensity that sent shivers down the spines of those who met his gaze. Riven's voice, deep and resonant, carried across the clearing like a clarion call, demanding attention and respect. Then, as if in defiance of the natural order, the air shifted. In a voice that sliced through the murmurs like a silver blade, Riven called out, "Kia!" The single word hung in the cool night air, reverberating around the clearing and drawing a collective breath from all who heard it. In that suspended moment, time seemed to fracture. Each heartbeat, each fluttering moment of anticipation, magnified into eternity. Kia felt a jolt, as if that name had awakened something dormant within her soul. Her heart pounded fiercely, echoing the rhythmic drumbeats, and her breath hitched in a mixture of shock and undeniable recognition. For a split second, the entire world narrowed down to that word, that singular call that transcended ordinary sound. It was as though the ancient spirits of the forest, the silent watchers of the pack, had aligned to declare that her destiny was entwined with that of the enigmatic Alpha. The reaction in the clearing was immediate and palpable. Whispers cascaded, like soft ripples across a still pond, punctuated by startled glances and murmured speculations. Eyes met in silent understanding. Even those who had long dismissed the idea of fate could not help but feel the gravity of the moment. Yet, for Kia, the experience was intensely personal, a collision of past loneliness and an unbidden hope that perhaps she was finally seen for who she truly was. As Riven advanced toward her, the crowd's fervor dimmed into a quiet, collective expectancy. His steps were deliberate and measured, each one resonating with the authority of a leader burdened by both power and a profound sorrow. In his eyes, Kia saw reflections of her own hidden depths, a turbulent mixture of regret, longing, and an almost desperate need for redemption. The connection between them, though shrouded in mystery, felt immediate and irreversible, as if it had been woven into the very fabric of their beings long before this night. Kia's internal world churned with conflicting emotions. On one hand, there was an exhilarating thrill at being singled out, at having her presence acknowledged by the formidable alpha. On the other, a deep-seated fear gnawed at her, a fear of the unknown implications of this sudden, fated bond. Memories of years spent hidden in the background, of yearning to be more than an invisible shadow, surged up in a tidal wave of emotion. In that moment, every quiet prayer and secret wish of her past seemed to converge into the radiant light of possibility that now shone in Riven's intense gaze. The atmosphere, thick with ceremonial incense and the weight of ancestral legacies, was suddenly imbued with a profound sense of destiny. The subtle hum of the forest, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the distant echo of ancient chants all served as a backdrop to this defining moment. It was as if the very air around them had been charged with an otherworldly energy, a signal that the delicate equilibrium of their supernatural realm was about to be forever altered. Riven's voice, softened by a hint of vulnerability rarely seen in his imposing demeanor, spoke once more as he reached out. "You are my chosen mate," he declared, the words resonating with an authority that was both undeniable and chilling. The shock in the clearing was mirrored in Kia's wide, startled eyes. In that instant, the collective breath of the pack seemed to catch in their throats, a moment of suspended disbelief, of hearts collectively racing as if touched by a spectral force. In the midst of the hushed silence, Kaya's mind raced. Every instinct urged her to retreat, to hide once again in the shadows where she had spent so much of her life. Yet, there was a spark, a fragile but luminous flame of hope, that beckoned her to step forward. She could feel the mysterious bond pulsing between them, a silent promise of a destiny replete with both profound beauty and heart-wrenching sacrifice. It was a connection that transcended words, a deep-seated understanding that in that moment, their fates were irrevocably linked. As the festival lights flickered and the ceremonial drums continued their relentless beat, the air vibrated with the realization that nothing would ever be the same. The spell of the gathering had been broken by one fateful utterance, one call that transcended the mundane and reached into the realm of the divine. In that electric silence, the pack bore witness to the birth of a bond, a mystic connection forged in the crucible of destiny, bound by both magic and the inescapable reality of their intertwined souls. In that charged moment of revelation, every face in the circle reflected a spectrum of emotions, from awe and wonder to trepidation and hope. For Kia, the journey that began with a solitary existence in the shadows was now destined to be a path lit by both the promise of love and the burden of a curse. And as Riven's presence enveloped her, drawing her into the vortex of an ancient pact, the night itself seemed to exhale, a quiet acknowledgement that a new chapter had begun, one that would challenge everything they believed about fate, love, and the very nature of their supernatural world. The revelation of the mate bond came like a sudden tempest, its truth crashing over Kia's heart with an intensity that left her breathless. In the hushed aftermath of that fateful call during the gathering, whispers of an ancient curse began to weave their way into the very fabric of her thoughts. It was said that the mate bond was more than a mere connection of souls. It was a sacred covenant, inscribed by the hands of fate itself, that bound two beings together for all eternity. Yet, as the layers of its mystique unraveled, Kia learned that this bond was also tainted by a dark curse, a malignant force that could shatter the very core of one's existence. According to the old legends, the mate bond was a blessing meant to unite hearts, a miraculous spark of destiny that could ignite unparalleled passion and strength. When two souls were meant to be together, the bond would manifest as a radiant pulse, visible only to those who were truly attuned to the supernatural. However, in the case of Kia and Riven, this sacred connection bore an unforeseen burden, a curse that had been passed down through generations, infecting the pure promise of love with a lingering shadow of doom. As Kia delved deeper into the lore of her people, the sinister nature of the curse began to emerge. It was whispered that the curse had its origins in a betrayal long forgotten, a tragic twist of fate where power and desire collided with betrayal and sorrow. This curse was not a simple misfortune. It was an intricate spell, woven with threads, of ancient malice and bound by relentless time, destined to haunt every union it touched. For those ensnared by its grasp, the mate bond, instead of being a source of solace and strength, transformed into a double-edged sword, a connection that promised both salvation and inevitable suffering. The more Kia learned, the more her inner world churned with turmoil. Each new detail about the curse and the mate bond stirred up memories of a life lived in the shadows, of long, lonely nights spent wondering if love was ever truly meant for her. She recalled every time she had hidden behind a smile, every moment of solitude that had carved deep lines of sorrow on her heart. Now, faced with the possibility that her very destiny was intertwined with a force so malevolent, Kia felt a tremor of dread ripple through her. What if the bond was not a sign of destined love, but a harbinger of pain and loss? What if the very connection she had yearned for was a curse in disguise? In the quiet solitude of the night, when the only sound was the steady rhythm of her own heartbeat, Kia's thoughts spiraled into a labyrinth of anxiety. She envisioned a future where the curse would not only warp her love for Riven, but also consume him, leaving both their lives shattered like broken glass. The fear was not just for herself, it was for the bond they shared, a bond that could either lift them to heights of transcendent joy or drag them into an abyss of despair. The duality of this fate gnawed at her, creating an inner conflict that was both raw and unyielding. She found herself torn between the undeniable pull of a love she had never dared to fully embrace and the terror of an unknown darkness that loomed over every whispered promise. Riven, too, carried the weight of this curse, a burden that seemed to seep from every pore of his very being. His eyes, once filled with the fire of a determined leader, now mirrored a quiet resignation, a silent admission that even his formidable strength was no match for the ancient curse. For Kia, witnessing that flicker of despair in his gaze was like seeing the very soul of the mate bond laid bare, a truth too painful to ignore. The bond, she realized, was not merely a conduit of passion and connection. It was a mirror reflecting their deepest vulnerabilities. Every moment of tenderness between them was shadowed by the specter of the curse, a reminder that their fate was intricately tied to forces beyond their control. In the days that followed, as Kia sought solace in the cryptic texts of the elders and the murmurs of the ancient spirits, a profound sense of unease settled over her. The bond, once a symbol of hope and destiny, now loomed as an ominous challenge to her very existence. She began to question everything she had ever believed about love and destiny. Was it possible for a bond so potent to be both a blessing and a curse? Could the same force that brought two souls together also be the catalyst for their undoing? These questions haunted her in the quiet hours before dawn, when the world was still and the shadows whispered secrets of despair. Every new piece of knowledge about the curse deepened her inner conflict. On one hand, she clung to the belief that the mate bond was a divine spark, a connection that, if nurtured with courage and sacrifice, could transcend even the darkest of curses. On the other hand, she could not shake the terror of a future where the curse would unravel their lives, leaving nothing but a trail of sorrow in its wake. It was a paradox that made her heart ache. The very element that had once offered the promise of eternal love now carried the threat of eternal loss. Caught in this maelstrom of conflicting emotions, Kaya found herself at a crossroads. She knew that to forge ahead, she would have to confront the curse head-on, a challenge that demanded not only bravery, but a willingness to sacrifice everything she held dear. The realization that her destiny might not be as she had once dreamed filled her with a bitter mix of fear and determination. Yet within that storm of doubt, there was also a flicker of defiance, a resolve to redefine her fate, no matter the cost. In the midst of her inner turmoil, the bond between Kaya and Riven pulsed with a silent urgency. It was as if the very air around them vibrated with the energy of their intertwined destinies, urging them to rise above the shadows of the curse. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with perils both seen and unseen, but the connection they shared was undeniable, a force that could either mend their broken hearts or shatter them beyond repair. As Kia stood at the threshold of this profound turning point, the world around her seemed to pause, a moment of suspended breath where time itself was uncertain. The mate bond, with all its ethereal promise and perilous curse, beckoned her to take a step forward, to embrace a destiny that was as terrifying as it was inevitable. In that silent, charged moment, she resolved to seek the truth, to unravel the tangled threads of fate, and to confront the curse that threatened to consume them both. The journey would be perilous, the stakes immeasurable, but in the depths of her heart, Kia knew that love, even in its most cursed form, was worth every sacrifice. In the quiet hours of the night, as the echoes of the gathering faded into a lingering silence, Kia found herself alone with the relentless beating of her own heart. The weight of the curse, and the bond that both united and tormented her, settled heavily on her shoulders. Alone in the darkness, she began to confront the depth of her emotions, each thought a silent whisper in the stillness of her secluded world. Kia's mind swirled with a torrent of feelings, a profound loneliness that had long been her only companion, a burning desire to be seen and loved, and the ever-present dread that this same bond could doom her to a fate of endless sorrow. As she sat beneath the ancient boughs of a towering oak, its branches silhouetted against the ink-black sky, she allowed herself to unravel the tangled threads of her heart. Every memory of isolation, every moment spent hiding in the shadows, converged into one piercing truth. She had always yearned for connection, for the kind of love that could heal even the deepest of wounds. But that yearning was forever tainted by the curse. In the quiet solitude, Kia's inner voice, soft yet insistent, questioned whether true love could ever exist when it was intertwined with such darkness. Am I ever worthy of love? She wondered, her thoughts echoing the familiar refrain of self-doubt that had haunted her for years. The very notion of being desired, of being chosen, was both intoxicating and terrifying. Her heart ached for acceptance, yet the curse whispered that her fate was sealed, that any affection directed her way would be as fleeting and fragile as a candle's flame in a storm. In that vulnerable moment, Kia's mind drifted to the pack, a family that had become both her sanctuary and her prison. The pack's expectations were a constant, oppressive presence. They had always looked upon her with a mixture of pity and caution, never fully embracing her as one of their own. Their glances carried an unspoken message. She was the outsider, the one whose destiny was marred by a mysterious bond and a haunting curse. The pressure to conform, to hide her true self beneath layers of quiet resignation, was almost unbearable. What if I never belong? She thought, the question reverberating in the silence around her. Her internal dialogue was a fierce battle between the desperate longing for personal freedom and the crushing responsibility to the pack. A duty to protect and uplift those who depended on her, even when she felt so utterly broken. Every step she took felt like a journey between two worlds. On one hand, there was the desire to step into the light, to let someone love her for who she truly was, beyond the curse. On the other, the weight of duty and tradition pulled her back into a life that demanded sacrifice and self-denial. Late into the night, as the moon cast its silver glow upon the forest floor, Kia's thoughts grew more tumultuous. The silence was punctuated by memories of fleeting moments when she had dared to believe in the possibility of happiness. She recalled instances when a kind word or a gentle touch had sparked a glimmer of hope, moments when the curse seemed like a distant threat rather than a crushing reality. Yet those memories were soon overshadowed by the harsh reality of her daily existence. Each day a reminder that the bond with Riven, however fated it might be, came at an unbearable cost. Why must love be so cruel? Kia's inner voice cried out, each syllable heavy with despair. The contradiction was stark. The same force that promised eternal union also imposed a relentless burden of isolation and uncertainty. It was as though every beat of her heart was a reminder of both, the beauty and the peril that accompanied the mate bond. In her quiet desperation, she questioned whether the sacrifice was ever truly worth it. The fear of losing herself, of becoming nothing more than a vessel for a cursed fate, gnawed at her relentlessly. As she wrestled with these overwhelming emotions, the world around her seemed to blur into a tapestry of shadows and muted sounds. The familiar rustling of leaves, once a soothing lullaby, now sounded like the mournful sighs of a spirit weighed down by regret. Every soft murmur of the wind, every creak of an old branch, became a somber reminder of the invisible chasm that separated her from the love she so deeply craved. The isolation she had known for so long now felt like a cruel destiny that left her eternally suspended between hope and despair. In the depths of her introspection, Kia also recognized a bittersweet truth. Her struggle was not merely a battle against the curse, but also a fight for her identity. The constant push and pull between her personal desires and the expectations of the pack had forced her to question who she was at her very core. Was she defined solely by the curse that seemed to shackle her fate? Or was there something more, a spark of resilience, a hidden strength that could light the way forward? This internal conflict was as old as her memories, a perpetual state of being torn between the person she wished to be and the role imposed upon her by fate. In her heart, a flicker of defiance began to kindle. Despite the pervasive fear and overwhelming uncertainty, a small voice whispered that perhaps she could reclaim a part of herself, a piece that was untainted by the darkness of the curse. That thought, as fragile as a wisp of smoke, filled her with a tentative hope. If she could learn to embrace her own worth, perhaps she could find a way to harness the power of the bond without being consumed by it. The challenge was monumental, the path fraught with peril, but the possibility of genuine connection, a love that transcended even the harshest of destinies, was a vision worth fighting for. The conflict within Kia was not one she could easily resolve. Each day, as she faced the watchful eyes of her pack and the haunting memories of her past, she felt the pressure to conform intensify. Yet, the spark of individuality that had always flickered within her demanded liberation, a cry for the freedom to love and be loved on her own terms. In those quiet moments, when the world around her was reduced to a single, unyielding silence, Kia's inner turmoil reached its crescendo. The questions and fears that had long been buried in the depths of her soul rose to the surface, mingling with the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, the mate bond was not a sentence to despair, but a doorway to transformation. Thus, caught in the crossfire of duty and desire, of expectation, and the aching need for self-acceptance, Kia stood at a precipice. The darkness that loomed within her was as tangible as the soft glow of the moon above, a constant reminder of the fragile balance between love and loss. In that moment of introspection, she vowed silently that she would not let the curse define her, nor would she allow the burden of the pack's expectations to crush the delicate yearning for a love that might one day set her free. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the future was shrouded in the mists of fate. But within the depths of her conflicted heart, Kia resolved to forge a path that honored both her duty and her deepest, most personal desire: to love and be loved, no matter the cost. Under the muted glow of a waning moon, the tension between duty and desire reached its breaking point in the heart of the pack's territory. In a secluded clearing, where shadows danced upon ancient stones and the scent of burning incense mingled with the crisp night air, Kia and Riven finally faced each other. A confrontation that had been long in the making. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken accusations and the weight of a destiny that neither could escape. Riven's eyes, dark and piercing like storm clouds, fixed on Kia with an intensity that brooked no compromise. His voice, low and resonant, cut through the stillness. "Kia," he began, each syllable heavy with authority and raw emotion. "You must understand that this bond, our mate bond, is not just a symbol of passion. It is the very essence of my role as Alpha. It defines me, and the curse it carries shapes everything I do for our pack." Kia's heart pounded in her chest as she met his unwavering gaze. The soft glow of the torches seemed to flicker in sympathy with her inner turmoil. "Riven," she replied, her tone trembling with a mixture of defiance and despair. "I know. The bond is powerful, and I feel its pull every moment. But must it be this way? Must our destiny be dictated by a curse that binds us, even if it brings us together?" A bitter smile crossed Riven's face, a fleeting expression that revealed the depth of his inner conflict. "This curse," he said, voice rising slightly as his frustration became palpable, "has been with me since the day I was born. It is the price of our lineage, the burden that shapes the fate of this entire pack. It is not something I chose, yet it is my responsibility to bear it and ensure that our people are protected." His words hung in the air like a challenge, and for a moment, the only sound was the distant echo of a lone wolf's howl. Kia's eyes glistened with unshed tears, as she struggled to balance her own yearning for love against the crushing expectations of duty. "But Riven," she insisted, stepping forward despite the heaviness in her limbs. "What about what I want? What about the part of me that longs to be seen and cherished as more than just a vessel for this cursed fate? I'm not simply a tool. For preserving the legacy of the pack, I am a person, with hopes, fears, and a heart that beats for something more." Riven's jaw tightened, and the intensity in his eyes deepened. "I never meant to dismiss your feelings, Kaya," he said, his voice softening as he took another deliberate step closer. "Believe me, every beat of my heart is burdened with the weight of this curse, and every moment I spend with you is both a blessing and a torment. But you must understand that this bond, as painful as it is also what holds our pack together. Without it, everything we have known would crumble into chaos." Their voices, rising and falling like the tide, formed a volatile duet of conflicting emotions. The tension between them was palpable, a searing mixture of love, anger, and sorrow. In that heated exchange, the ancient forest seemed to bear witness to their struggle. Leaves rustled as if whispering secrets, and the cool night air carried the silent echoes of a destiny that refused to be rewritten. "Kia," Riven continued, his tone now edged with desperation, "I have always carried this curse like a shadow, a reminder of the sacrifices demanded by our destiny. I accepted it as part of my duty, even when it tore at my soul. But when I see the way you look at me, as if you believe there is hope beyond this relentless fate, it both terrifies and inspires me." Kia's voice wavered with a blend of anger and tenderness. "Riven, I do not fear our bond. What I fear is losing myself within it. I feel torn, as if I am being pulled in two directions at once, towards a duty that suffocates me and towards a love that might free me. How can I reconcile these two halves when they seem destined to conflict?" A heavy silence fell between them, punctuated only by the distant murmur of the pack's nocturnal vigilance. Riven's eyes softened, revealing the depth of his own internal torment. "I wish I could offer you a clear answer, Kia," he murmured, almost to himself. "Every day I wake with the hope that we might find a way to defy this curse, to transform it into something that binds us without tearing us apart. But the truth is, every step we take together is a battle against fate itself." Their conversation reached a fevered pitch, a delicate climax where every word became a battle cry against the inevitable. In that moment, as the shadows converged around them, and the staccato rhythm of the pack's heartbeat filled the clearing. It was as if the very forces of nature had stilled to witness this intimate duel. Each of them bore the marks of their own pain and defiance. Kia, with eyes wide open to both her longing and her despair, and Riven, with a hardened resolve that belied the vulnerability etched in every line of his face. "I am not asking for an easy path, Riven," Kaya said, her voice gaining strength as she clutched at the remnants of her own hope. "I am asking for a chance to be more than this curse, to be loved for who I truly am, to not be defined solely by the darkness that threatens to consume us." Riven's gaze faltered for a heartbeat, and then he took her hand, a gesture that spoke volumes amid the tumult of their emotions. "Kia, I want that too. More than anything, I want to break free from this curse and forge a future where our bond is a source of strength, not sorrow. But the path ahead is fraught with sacrifices we may not be ready to bear." In that charged exchange, the air around them crackled with a raw energy, a promise of both imminent struggle and potential redemption. The pack, standing silently in the background, bore witness to the turbulence of a connection that was as powerful as it was perilous. For a brief moment, the tension softened, replaced by a fragile understanding, an unspoken agreement that, despite the heavy chains of duty and the looming curse, their love was a beacon that might yet light the way through the darkness. Yet, even as the intensity of their dialogue subsided, an undercurrent of uncertainty remained. The chasm between responsibility and desire was not easily bridged, and the first true test of their bond had only just begun. In the depths of the clearing, under the watchful gaze of ancient trees and a silent, star-studded sky, Kia and Riven stood on the precipice of a new reality, one where the collision of fate and free will would determine not only the future of their love, but the destiny of the entire pack. As the night deepened, the weight of their words and the raw vulnerability of their confrontation lingered in the cool air, a moment of truth that resonated like a heartbeat in the stillness, promising that even in the midst of a curse, love could be a force worth fighting for. In the days that followed the explosive confrontation between Kia and Riven, the pack's once unyielding unity began to fracture under the strain of whispered rumors and furtive glances. The abnormal nature of the bond between the alpha and the elusive outcast had not gone unnoticed, and its ripple effects spread like wildfire through the tight-knit community. The air in the camp was thick with a tension that seemed almost tangible, as if every member of the pack were collectively holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable fallout. Deep within the heart of the pack, loyal warriors and revered elders exchanged heated whispers in shadowed corners. Their voices, low and laced with both suspicion and concern, painted a picture of a community on the brink of internal strife. "Have you seen the way Riven looks at her?" one grizzled veteran murmured, his eyes darting nervously toward the duo. "It's as if he's forsaking the pack for some forbidden love," another added, his tone accusatory. Even the most seasoned fighters, whose lives had been defined by duty and sacrifice, could not help but voice their apprehension about the unforeseen consequences of such an unusual bond. The pack's reaction was a mix of disdain, uncertainty, and fear. For generations, the traditions had been clear. Each member was expected to uphold the sanctity of their ancestral customs, with the alpha serving as the steadfast beacon of strength and stability. Riven, with his dark allure and the burdensome curse he carried, was the epitome of that role. Now, however, his growing attachment to Kia was seen by many as a dangerous deviation from the path of duty. Among the younger warriors, there simmered a quiet discontent, a belief that the old ways were being challenged by emotions that could weaken the very fabric of the pack. At the heart of this internal conflict was Ronan, a formidable warrior known for his unwavering loyalty and unyielding adherence to tradition. His eyes, sharp and penetrating, seemed to miss nothing. Ronan had long been regarded as the enforcer of the pack's unspoken rules, and now his disapproval of Riven's actions was evident in every measured step he took around the camp. During the communal meetings, his voice would cut through the murmurs of dissent. "Our strength lies in unity and discipline," he would intone, his tone brooking no argument. "If our alpha allows personal entanglements to override his duty, we risk losing not only our heritage, but the very essence of what binds us together." These pointed criticisms were not limited to a single faction. Even among those who had once admired Riven's leadership, there now existed a sense of apprehension. They recalled the weight of his curse, the very curse that had bestowed upon him an almost supernatural strength, yet also a vulnerability that could be exploited. His bond with Kia, with all its beauty and potential for redemption, was also viewed as a distraction, a dangerous lure that might lead him astray from his responsibilities. Whispers floated in the air like dark omens, that the curse might tighten its grip, that the delicate balance between love and duty was teetering on the edge of collapse. Amidst these internal conflicts, the pack's elders convened in a solemn assembly under a canopy of ancient pines. Their weathered faces, etched with decades of wisdom and sorrow, were masks of concern as they deliberated on the future. "This bond," one elder began, his voice soft but resolute, "is an anomaly that could unravel our very foundation. It is not merely the union of two souls. It is a merging of destinies that has the potential to either heal or shatter us." His words, heavy with implication, resonated with the gathered leaders, who nodded in somber agreement. The assembly was marked by a collective anxiety, a foreboding sense that if the matter was not addressed, it would herald a series of events that none could predict or control. The tension escalated further when minor skirmishes broke out among the rank and file. Loyalists, driven by a fierce sense of duty, began to challenge any signs of leniency toward what they deemed an aberration. In training sessions and nightly patrols, grumbles of discontent turned into heated arguments. Some argued that Riven's distractions endangered the safety of the entire pack, while others contended that personal happiness could not be sacrificed on the altar of tradition. The internal discord was not merely ideological, it was deeply personal, pitting friend against friend, brother against brother. Each confrontation added another layer of strain to an already volatile atmosphere, leaving scars that would take years to heal. Kia, meanwhile, found herself caught in a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. Although she had always lived in the shadows, striving for acceptance and quietly harboring hopes of love, she was painfully aware that her very presence now stirred unrest among those around her. Every glance, every hushed conversation, was a reminder that she was seen as both a beacon of possibility and a harbinger of potential ruin. The isolation that had once shielded her now felt like a double-edged sword. On one side, it granted her a freedom from the burdens of expectation. On the other, it deepened the chasm between her own desires and the rigid structure of the pack. In the midst of this maelstrom, a sense of impending catastrophe loomed large. The pack's collective anxiety, the simmering dissent, all hinted at a turning point, a moment when the fragile unity that had sustained them for so long might finally give way. The air was charged with an almost electric anticipation, a foretaste of calamity that no one dared to ignore. Some believed that the internal strife was merely a precursor to an even greater external threat, a sign that the delicate balance of their supernatural world was on the verge of being upset by forces both seen and unseen. As the days passed, the ripple effect of these tensions began to manifest in subtle yet unmistakable ways. Rituals that had once been performed with solemn pride now carried an undercurrent of reluctance. Meetings were shorter, voices quieter, as if the very act of coming together was a reminder of the deep fractures within their community. The pack's nocturnal gatherings, once filled with the harmonious cadence of unified hearts, now echoed with discordant notes of suspicion and unease. In this charged environment, every decision carried an overwhelming weight, a burden that extended far beyond individual desires. The bond between Kia and Riven, with all its mystique and potential, had become a lightning rod for the pack's collective fears and ambitions. It was no longer just a personal matter. It was the crucible in which the fate of the entire community would be decided. And as the shadows lengthened and the cool night air settled over the encampment, it became clear to all that the days ahead would be marked by challenges that would test the very core of their beliefs and the strength of their unity. In this fraught atmosphere, the pack stood at a crossroads. The repercussions of this extraordinary bond, so full of promise yet so perilous, would shape their future in ways that none could foresee. The whispers, the arguments, the silent glances of disapproval, all converged into a single, unyielding truth. The balance was fragile, and any misstep could ignite a conflagration that would consume them all. The storm of dissent was building, and as it gathered momentum, every member of the pack braced themselves for the inevitable reckoning that was fast approaching. Determined not to surrender to the fate that had long haunted her, Kia made the heart-wrenching decision to defy the curse and seek a way to break its relentless hold. With a resolve born from countless lonely nights and the agony of a love tarnished by darkness, she quietly prepared to step beyond the familiar confines of her pack's territory. Even as the murmurs of dissent and the weight of ancient traditions pressed upon her, Kia felt an unyielding spark within, a promise that she could reclaim her destiny and perhaps even free Riven from his tormented curse. Under a sky smeared with the muted hues of dawn, Kia slipped away from the encampment. The forest, usually a place of both refuge and melancholy, now shimmered with the subtle excitement of possibility. Every rustle of leaves, every distant chirp of early birds, seemed to urge her forward on this perilous journey. Her heart pounded, with a mix of fear and determination, each step echoing the silent vow she had made, to unearth the secrets buried in the shadows of the past and dismantle the curse that bound her fate. After days of solitary travel through dense, mist-laden woodlands and over rugged terrain, Kia finally arrived at a secluded glen, rumored to be the sanctuary of a mysterious sorceress, a woman whose knowledge of ancient magic and forbidden lore was whispered about in hushed tones among the elders of her pack. The glen was a realm apart, where nature itself appeared to bend to the will of hidden forces. The air here vibrated with a potent energy, and the ancient trees, their bark etched with cryptic runes, formed a natural archway to a clearing bathed in an ethereal light. In the center of the clearing stood a weathered stone cottage, its walls draped in ivy, and its windows aglow with a soft, inviting luminescence. It was here that Kia was to meet the sorceress, known only as Althea, a name that resonated with mystery and whispered power. With a deep breath to steady her nerves, Kia approached the cottage, each footstep measured and resolute. The world around her seemed to hold its breath, as though even nature itself awaited the outcome of her quest. At the heavy wooden door, intricately carved with symbols that spoke of both protection and peril, Kia hesitated for a moment. Summoning every ounce of her courage, she knocked gently. The sound echoed like a solitary heartbeat through the still air, and moments later, the door creaked open, revealing Althea. Draped in layers of dark, flowing fabrics that shimmered with subtle hints of silver and midnight blue, the sorceress exuded an aura of timeless wisdom and quiet authority. Her eyes, deep and knowing, met Kia's with an intensity that seemed to peer directly into the soul, as if weighing the true measure of her heart. "Welcome, child," Althea intoned softly, her voice both soothing and laden with gravitas. "I have sensed your arrival long before you crossed my threshold. The threads of destiny have brought you here, burdened with questions that have plagued your nights." Kia's throat tightened as she stepped inside. The interior of the cottage was a sanctum of mystical relics and ancient texts, a labyrinth of arcane symbols, glowing crystals, and scrolls bound in worn leather. Every surface seemed to hum with the resonance of forgotten incantations. I seek a way to break the curse," Kia confessed, her voice trembling slightly. "I cannot accept this fate, that our bond, our love, is shackled by a force that brings only pain and separation." Althea regarded her with a mix of pity and admiration. "The mate bond you share is no ordinary connection, Kia," she explained, guiding the young woman to a sturdy table cluttered with maps, star charts, and cryptic manuscripts. "It is forged in the crucible of destiny, intertwined with the ancient energies of our world. Yet, like all great power, it carries a cost, a curse born of betrayal and sorrow, passed down through the ages." As the sorceress began to unfurl a brittle yellowed scroll, the room filled with an aura of solemn mystery. Althea's words wove a tapestry of ancient lore, a tale of love, ambition, and a pact made by long-forgotten ancestors whose hearts were torn asunder by treachery. "This curse," she murmured, "was not simply cast upon you and Riven by chance. It is the echo of a grievous sin, a punishment meant to remind the heirs of a once-proud legacy of the price of hubris and disloyalty." Kia listened intently as Althea revealed fragments of a long-lost ritual, an ancient rite that might, if performed correctly, sever the malignant ties of the curse. The details were intricate, laden with symbolic gestures, rare ingredients imbued with celestial energy, and a perilous alignment of cosmic forces that occurred but once in a generation. Each word ignited a tumult of hope and fear within Kaya. The possibility of salvation danced tantalizingly close, yet the path to it was fraught with risks that could shatter her spirit or, worse, further imperil the pack. "The ritual demands sacrifice, dear one," Althea warned, her tone heavy with unspoken sorrow. "Not only must you confront the darkness that has long haunted your bloodline, but you must also be willing to relinquish that which you hold most dear. The balance between love and duty is delicate, and tampering with it may have unforeseen consequences." Kia's heart pounded with the weight of the decision. In that moment, she recalled the countless nights spent wrestling with her inner demons, the isolation and longing that had driven her to this very brink. "I will do whatever it takes," she declared, her voice steadier now, infused with newfound determination. "I cannot stand by and let this curse define our lives, or tear apart the bond that gives my existence meaning." Althea's eyes softened as she nodded, acknowledging the fierce resolve in Kia's spirit. "Very well," she said. "I will teach you what I know. But be warned, the journey ahead will demand courage, sacrifice, and the unwavering belief that love, in all its frailty and strength, is worth fighting for." The sorceress's hands moved gracefully over the scroll, tracing faded symbols that seemed to glow in the dim light. Each gesture carried a rhythm of forgotten magic, stirring the air with an energy that both comforted and terrified Kia. For hours, the two delved into the ancient texts, piecing together clues from a past shrouded in mystery. With each revelation, the tension in the room grew, part anticipation, part foreboding. The process was like assembling a vast, intricate puzzle, where every fragment of lore hinted at both a path to redemption and the looming specter of further peril. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, casting long, spectral shadows across the worn floorboards, Kia felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She now carried with her a fragile hope, a possibility that she might be able to reverse the cruel fate that had been imposed upon her and Riven. In that quiet, charged moment, as the ancient words of a long-forgotten ritual echoed in her mind, Kia understood that her journey was only just beginning. The secrets of the curse, though partially unveiled, were as deep and complex as the labyrinthine forest that lay beyond the cottage walls. Yet, with Althea's guidance and the spark of determination burning within her, Kia vowed to follow the path laid out before her, no matter how treacherous or heartbreaking it might be. Leaving the sanctuary of the cottage with a bundle of cryptic instructions and a heart brimming with both hope and dread, Kia stepped back into the wild embrace of the ancient woods. The journey ahead was cloaked in uncertainty, but in that moment, Every step felt like a defiant stride against the chains of destiny. With the promise of unraveling the curse lingering in her mind, she set forth into the unknown, ready to confront whatever trials fate had in store. Deep within the dim recesses of the Pack's ancient archives, a hidden history lay waiting to be unearthed, a legacy woven through generations of alphas and shrouded in mystery. Kia, driven by a determination to break the curse that bound her fate with Riven's, now found herself poring over brittle, time-worn journals and relics that whispered secrets of a bygone era. Each faded page and carved symbol carried the weight of countless sacrifices, the echoes of power, and the shadow of betrayal that had given rise to the curse. The journal, bound in cracked leather and inscribed in an elegant yet somber hand, was the first of many relics that revealed the origins of the Pack. Its entries recounted a time when the Pack was more than a mere collection of kindred spirits. They were a mighty clan led by alphas, whose decisions shaped the destiny of entire realms. The text spoke of a golden age, when the bond between alpha and mate was not marred by darkness, but celebrated as a divine union that fortified the spirit of the Pack. Yet, amid these lofty ideals, a series of ominous events was recorded with trembling ink, a betrayal that struck at the very heart of their sacred covenant. According to the ancient writings, an ambitious alpha once dared to defy the natural order. Consumed by pride and driven by a lust for power, he sought to manipulate the mate bond for his own gain. In doing so, he broke a hallowed promise and incurred the wrath of the primordial forces that governed destiny. The resulting curse was not a simple misfortune, but a carefully wrought punishment, a malevolent force woven into the very fabric of the bond. From that day forward, every union forged under the guise of fate carried within it a seed of sorrow and potential ruin. As Kia carefully turned the fragile pages, she discovered that the curse had not only tainted the bond between her and Riven, but had also been a constant undercurrent throughout the lineage of alphas. Each subsequent leader had, in some way, borne the burden of this dark legacy. The journal chronicled how, over the centuries, the curse had grown stronger, festering like an unhealed wound. It was this relentless presence that had gradually eroded the purity of the mate bond, turning it into a double-edged sword, capable of bestowing profound strength, yet equally prone to unleashing devastating sorrow. A silver amulet, discovered tucked away in a forgotten drawer of the Pack's ancestral home, further deepened the mystery. Etched with cryptic runes and symbols of celestial origin, the amulet was believed to be a talisman, once worn by the very first Alpha, a guardian of the ancient covenant who had tried, in vain, to prevent the curse from taking root. Holding the amulet, Kia felt an electric pulse of history surge through her veins, a connection to a time when honor and sacrifice were inextricably linked, and every decision was a matter of life and death for the Pack. The relic's cold metal against her skin was a stark reminder that the legacy of her people was as much a burden as it was a beacon of hope. Yet, with every revelation came a torrent of questions. Who was the Alpha whose betrayal had set this tragic chain of events into motion? Could the curse ever be undone? Or was it destined to continue its insidious grip through the ages? And, most painfully, what price would the Pack and Kia herself have to pay for daring to challenge such an ancient force? The journal's cryptic passages hinted at a ritual, an arduous process that might sever the cursed bond, but they also warned of sacrifices that would shake the very foundations of the Pack's identity. In the quiet solitude of that ancestral chamber, Kia's mind whirled with conflicting emotions. On one hand, there was the lure of reclaiming a legacy of honor, a chance to restore the mate bond to its former glory, and free her people from the dark stain of the curse. On the other, the sheer magnitude of the history before her filled her with dread. The Pack's past was a tapestry of both triumph and tragedy, and every secret she uncovered only deepened the rift between the ideals of unity and the brutal reality of their lineage. Her thoughts turned to Riven, his stoic determination, his haunted eyes that bore the scars of centuries-old despair. She could see in his gaze the same questions and silent anguish that now churned within her. The bond they shared was not merely a personal connection. It was the inheritor of a legacy, steeped in both hope and irrevocable loss. The realization was both empowering and paralyzing. Kia wondered if their union, no matter how fated, could ever escape the shadow of a past that seemed to dictate every moment of their present. In the dim light of the ancient archives, the voices of long-departed alphas seemed to murmur from the walls, reminders of promises broken, battles fought, and sacrifices made. Their voices, carried on the winds of time, urged Kia to understand that the curse was not merely an external force to be battled, but a profound part of her heritage that demanded reckoning. The pages she read were not just historical records. They were a call to action, a challenge to reimagine the very essence of what it meant to be part of the pack. Standing amidst relics and forgotten lore, Kia felt the weight of destiny settle upon her like a shroud. The secrets of the past were clear. The curse was born of hubris and treachery, a malignant echo of a time when ambition overrode the sacred balance of life. Now, that curse threatened to tear apart the delicate unity of the pack, pitting duty against desire and tradition against transformation. As the ancient clock of fate ticked inexorably onward, Kia understood that the answers she sought were not easily won. The deeper she delved into the mysteries of the pack's history, the more she realized that every revelation came with its own cost. With every secret unearthed, the stakes grew higher. The legacy of the Alphas, the sacrifice of generations past, and the very future of her people rested on a knife's edge, a precipice where every decision could either mend the fractured bonds of destiny or plunge the pack into an abyss of eternal sorrow. In that solemn moment, surrounded by the relics of a once glorious past, Kia resolved to confront these ancient truths head-on. The journey ahead would be fraught with peril, and the answers might demand sacrifices she was not yet sure she could make. Yet the call of her heritage, the whispered hopes of a future free from the curse's dark grip, urged her to press forward. The past was calling, and Kia knew that to forge a new destiny for herself, for Riven, and for the entire pack, she would have to first embrace the painful, enigmatic legacy that had shaped them all. The night erupted into chaos as a dark, malevolent force, known only as chaos, descended upon the pack. What began as an eerie silence swiftly transformed into a cacophony of snarls, shouts, and the relentless pounding of hearts. The air, once cool and filled with whispered secrets, now crackled with the electric fury of impending doom. Shadows shifted unpredictably, and an unholy light illuminated the faces of the pack members as they prepared to confront a threat that none had anticipated. In the center of this unfolding maelstrom, Riven stood like a pillar of strength, at least that was how it had always been. But tonight, something was terribly different. Under the overwhelming pressure of the curse, the Alpha's eyes, once deep pools of controlled determination, now burned with a wild, unsettling intensity. A guttural roar, raw and primal, tore through the night as Riven's figure began to warp and contort before the horrified eyes of those gathered. In a horrifying moment, the man who had once commanded respect and loyalty transformed into a rogue, a creature of chaos, his noble features twisted by the dark influence that had seeped into his very soul. Kia's heart clenched as she watched this transformation. Riven's powerful presence, which had always been a source of safety and guidance, now radiated an aura of uncontrollable menace. His fur bristled as his form began shifting erratically, a man no longer, but a beast, tormented by the curse's insidious grip. The very air around him seemed to vibrate with the force of his anguish and rage. In that terrifying moment, fear gripped Kia's soul. The bond she had cherished, the destiny she had once dared to hope for, was now marred by a monstrous betrayal. It was as if the curse, having reached its zenith, was stripping away everything that Riven had ever been. The pack, thrown into disarray, scattered in every direction as chaos broke loose. Loyal warriors and elders alike found themselves caught in a maelstrom of frenzied combat. Howls of defiance and terror mingled with the piercing clatter of battle. The ground became a battleground stained by the chaos' unholy influence. Embers and swirling shadows colliding amid the chaos of clashing bodies. Amid this pandemonium, Riven, now more beast than man, lunged forward with an intensity that defied reason. His movements were feral, every swipe and lunge executed with a savagery that left the pack's finest warriors reeling in shock. Kia, torn between love and duty, could only watch in agonizing disbelief as the alpha she had known disintegrated before her eyes. Her inner voice screamed to hold on to the faint hope that the man within the beast might still be saved, but the overwhelming display of raw, corrupted power left her paralyzed. Amid the chaos, she steeled herself, her eyes filling with a mixture of determination and sorrow. She knew that this was not just a battle against an external enemy, but a desperate struggle to reclaim the soul of the one she loved. In a brief lull in the battle, the roar of the transformed Riven reverberated through the clearing, a sound that was both a cry of anguish and a declaration of war against fate itself. The rogue alpha's ferocity seemed unstoppable as he advanced, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. Every pack member braced for impact, weapons raised in a futile attempt to subdue the uncontrollable force that Riven had become. Their shouts of defiance and desperate commands were drowned out by the furious clamor of the curse-fueled assault. Kia, her heart pounding like a frantic drum, mustered every ounce of courage she possessed and sprinted towards Riven. Her mind raced with conflicting emotions, the deep, aching love that had drawn her to him, and the stark terror that now clawed at her as she witnessed his descent into darkness. "Riven!" she cried out, her voice breaking through the din of battle, halting for a suspended moment the feral advance of the rogue. In that instant, time seemed to slow, the very air holding its breath as Kia's desperate plea cut through the chaos. For a fleeting heartbeat, Riven's blood-red eyes flickered, a brief glimpse of recognition of the man he had once been. It was as if the bond they shared, strained to its breaking point, stirred something buried deep within him. But before that spark could grow, the overwhelming power of the curse surged forth, enveloping him once more in its dark embrace. With a snarl that shook the very ground, he lunged at Kia, his form a blur of primal aggression. In the ensuing moments, the clearing became a stage for a desperate struggle between the forces of love and the relentless tide of the curse. Kia dodged and weaved through the chaotic melee, her every movement fueled by the need to reach the man she loved buried beneath layers of corruption. Her eyes, wide with fear and fierce determination, locked onto Riven's shifting form as she called out to him. Each word a plea for redemption, a desperate wish that he might remember who he was. The battle reached a fevered pitch. The pack's warriors, fighting tooth and nail against both the external assault of chaotic forces and the internal threat of their rogue alpha, found themselves pushed to the brink. The ground trembled with the fury of combat, the air thick with the stench of sweat, blood, and unholy magic. The chaos force, like a living entity, wove through the fray, its presence a constant reminder of the peril that loomed over them all. It was as if the very essence of darkness had taken on a physical form, intent on tearing apart the bonds that held the pack together. Amidst this torrent of violence, Kia's voice rang out, a clarion call that pierced the cacophony of battle. "Riven, remember me," she implored, her words trembling with raw emotion. "Remember the man who loves you, the man who still believes you can overcome this curse." Her plea, filled with both hope and desperation, echoed through the clearing, momentarily quieting the tumult as all eyes fixed on the tormented figure of Riven. For a brief, agonizing moment, it seemed as though the fury of the curse might relent, as if the intensity of Kia's love had the power to break through the darkness. But the curse was deep-rooted, a force of nature that would not be so easily undone. Riven's roar shattered the fragile silence as he resumed his savage advance, the brief spark of recognition extinguished by the overwhelming tide of his transformation. In that climactic instant, Kia realized that the path to saving Riven, and indeed the entire pack, would be paved with pain and sacrifice. The man she had loved was now a battleground where the forces of destiny waged war against the remnants of his humanity. As the rogue Alpha closed in, his every movement a harbinger of the chaos that threatened to engulf them all, Kia braced herself for the most harrowing battle of her life, a battle not just for love, but for the very soul of the pack. The clash continued unabated, a furious dance of shadow and light, of hope and despair. Each moment was a desperate struggle to reclaim what had been lost, a fight against an enemy that was both external and frighteningly internal. The night bore witness to a tragic symphony, a conflict where every cry and every clash of steel resonated with the unyielding force of fate. And as the chaos raged on, it became painfully clear that the outcome of this brutal confrontation would not only determine the destiny of Riven, but would irrevocably shape the future of the entire pack. In Ned, the dim light of a blood-red sunset, Kia stood at the edge of the pack's encampment, her heart a battleground of hope and despair. The night's earlier chaos had left deep scars on both her soul and on those she held dear. Now, with Riven's fate hanging in the balance and the very survival of the pack threatened, she was forced to confront the impossible choice: to hold fast to the fated bond that had once been a symbol of love and destiny, or to sacrifice that same bond in order to save him, and by extension, the entire pack. Her mind replayed every anguished moment of the recent battle. The sight of Riven, once a noble alpha, transformed into a rogue beast by the curse, haunted her thoughts. Every furious roar, every savage lunge, seemed to echo the terrible truth. The mate bond was not just a blessing, but a chain, binding him to a darkness that was consuming him entirely. In those fleeting seconds, when her desperate cry, "Remember me," had nearly stirred the man she loved, she had caught a glimpse of the tenderness hidden beneath the monstrous exterior. But that moment of vulnerability was as fleeting as a dying ember in a raging inferno. Kia sank to her knees on the cold, hard ground, her eyes fixed on the scorched earth before her. She could feel the pulse of destiny in every tremor of the wind, every whisper of the ancient trees surrounding the encampment. The weight of the mate bond pressed on her like a suffocating shroud, a reminder of both her profound connection with Riven and the curse that had tainted it. Her heart ached with the realization that holding on to the bond might doom them all to endless torment, while severing it could free them from the curse's stranglehold, but at a cost she feared might shatter her very soul. In the silent recesses of her mind, a torrent of questions surged forth. Could love truly survive if it were unburdened by the dark legacy of the curse? Was the mate bond, that had once promised an eternal union, now nothing more than a shackle that bound them to a fate of suffering? Every memory of lonely nights spent yearning for acceptance clashed with the desperate need to protect the pack. She recalled the countless times she had hidden in the shadows, listening to the mournful howls that signified not only loss, but a deep-rooted disconnection from those she cared about. Now, as she faced the stark reality before her, she wondered if the bond had become an anchor, weighing them down in the depths of despair. Tears welled in her eyes as the internal struggle raged within her. The thought of severing the fated bond that had defined her relationship with Riven since the moment they first met, filled her with an indescribable grief. It was as if the very essence of her being, her identity, was interwoven with that connection. Yet she also knew that if she did nothing, the curse would continue to twist Riven further into a creature of chaos, endangering not only him, but everyone in the pack. The burden of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. She could not bear to see her people fall apart under the relentless grip of an ancient evil. In that excruciating moment, as the wind howled like a chorus of lost souls around her, Kia's mind echoed with the voices of those who had come before, a lineage of alphas and outcasts whose sacrifices had paved the way for her existence. Their silent pleas, woven into the very fabric of her heritage, urged her to find strength in vulnerability, to embrace the possibility of a new future, even if it meant relinquishing what she had always known. The ancient relics and faded journals she had discovered in the pack's archives now whispered a painful truth: that the curse was born of betrayal and ambition, a malignant force that could only be undone by a sacrifice so profound that it would tear at the very core of one's identity. Kia's breathing grew shallow as she visualized the ritual described in those cryptic texts. The ritual promised liberation from the curse, a chance to break the malignant cycle and restore balance to the pack. But it came at a harrowing price: the severing of the mate bond. To sacrifice the bond meant to relinquish the love that had sustained her through years of loneliness and fear. It meant to let go of the hope that had flickered, however faintly, in Riven's eyes during that brief moment of clarity. The decision tore at her heart, as if every beat was a lament for a future that might never be. Struggling to steady her trembling hands, Kia recalled the many nights she had spent praying for a miracle, for a chance to rewrite the cruel destiny imposed upon them. Her mind was a storm of memories: the soft warmth of a fleeting touch, the gentle murmur of promises whispered in the quiet dark, and the unbearable silence of isolation. In those moments, she had dreamed of a love that could conquer even the most insidious of curses, a love that would transform pain into strength. But now, as the specter of doom loomed larger than ever, she realized that sometimes love demanded a sacrifice, a letting go of what one holds most dear in order to save not only the one you love, but the entire world you share. With a deep, shuddering exhale, Kia rose to her feet, her resolve hardening like tempered steel. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty and heartbreak, but she could no longer afford to be paralyzed by indecision. If she were to have any hope of saving Riven and the pack, she must act, even if that action meant breaking the bond that had defined her life. Her eyes, now blazing with a fierce determination, reflected both the pain of her impending loss and the unwavering belief that sacrifice, however brutal, was the key to a future free of the curse. In a voice that trembled, yet carried an unyielding resolve, Kia whispered to the silent night, "I will do this. I will let go so that we may be free." Her words were a solemn promise to herself and to those who depended on her strength. The decision was agonizing, a chasm of heartbreak and hope that no mortal could traverse lightly. Yet, in that moment, she understood that the true test of love was not in its endurance under the weight of fate, but in the courage to sacrifice it for the greater good. As the twilight deepened into a velvet night, Kia prepared herself for the ritual that would sever the cursed bond, a ritual that would demand every ounce of her courage, every fragment of her soul. With the ancient texts clutched tightly in her hand, and the memories of her past fueling her determination, she stepped forward into a future where love, duty, and sacrifice converged into one fateful act. The road ahead promised pain and uncertainty, but Kia's decision was a beacon of defiant hope, a declaration that even in the face of destiny's cruel hand, the human spirit could rise, and love, even sacrificed, could be a force for redemption. In the aftermath of Kia's heartrending decision to sever the cursed bond, the pack gathered in a sacred clearing under a sky heavy with portent. Here, ancient stone altars and meticulously etched symbols on weathered monoliths bore silent witness to countless rituals of yore. Tonight, however, the air thrummed with a new tension, a mixture of desperate hope and deep foreboding dread. The ritual to break the curse was about to begin, a final, fateful act that promised liberation, yet carried an unquantifiable cost. Kia and Riven stood at the center of the clearing, their figures bathed in the pale luminescence of ritual torches. Riven, his eyes now softened by a mixture of anguish and tentative hope, looked at Kia as if searching for a sign that their souls could still merge despite the impending sacrifice. Kia's hands trembled, not from weakness, but from the gravity of the moment. Before them lay an intricately designed altar, adorned with ancient relics, mystical herbs, and vials filled with shimmering liquids said to hold the essence of forgotten magic. Every object on the altar seemed to pulsate with a life of its own, as though aware of the monumental power contained within this ritual. With a steadying breath, Kia began reciting the incantations that Althea had painstakingly revealed to her. Her voice, though soft at first, grew steadily more resolute as each word fell from her lips, vibrating with the energy of old spells. The incantation, a language of symbols and sound long lost to time, resonated in the still night, stirring the ancient energies that had slept beneath the earth for centuries. Riven's face, a mask of pained determination, mirrored the tumult of his inner being. A man caught between the vestiges of his former self and the dark forces that had claimed him. As the incantation reached its crescendo, the ground beneath, their feet began to hum. The runes etched into the stones flared with a fierce ghostly light, and the air became thick with the scent of burning sage and myrrh. A palpable surge of raw, untamed power swept through the clearing, encircling Kia, and Riven like an invisible tempest. In that charged moment, the bond that had once united them seemed to shimmer and vibrate, its essence caught in the maelstrom of magic. But the ritual was not without peril. As the incantations intensified, tendrils of dark energy, remnants of the ancient curse, attempted to claw their way back into the open. The air filled with the low, menacing whispers of forces that did not wish for the curse to be undone. Kia's heart pounded as she felt the resistance of the curse pushing against the purification process, testing her resolve and the strength of her sacrifice. Every heartbeat was a reminder of the delicate balance between salvation and the potential for even greater catastrophe. In the midst of this spiritual battle, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the altar. The surge of energy was overwhelming, momentarily blinding everyone present. When the light faded, Kia's eyes fell upon Riven, whose form now bore the unmistakable marks of transformation. His once tormented eyes softened, and his features, though still scarred by the curse, exuded a renewed clarity. It was as if the ritual had reached deep into the darkest recesses of his soul, drawing out the malignant force and leaving behind a fragile purity. The bond between them, for a fleeting moment, glowed with a gentle radiance, a temporary healing that promised hope even in the face of insurmountable odds. Yet, as the initial surge of recovery subsided, a heavy silence fell upon the clearing. The ritual, though partially successful, had not eradicated the curse entirely. Instead, it had suspended its malign influence, offering a reprieve that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Kia's chest tightened as she sensed that the price of their sacrifice was far from over. The fleeting clarity in Riven's eyes was tempered by the lingering shadows of the curse, a silent reminder that their salvation might be temporary. Their souls, intertwined by fate, bore the marks of the ordeal, scars that would serve as perpetual reminders of the sacrifice they had made. The pack members, who had watched in a mixture of awe and trepidation, began to murmur among themselves. Some saw the ritual's success as a sign of hope, a chance to restore unity and heal the ancient wounds that had long divided them. Others, however, exchanged wary glances, aware that the very act of tampering with such potent, dark forces might invite unforeseen consequences. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation and lingering doubt. It was clear that while the curse had been weakened, its remnants would continue to haunt them, questioning the true cost of the sacrifice. Kia, standing amidst the fading glow of the ritual's energy, felt an overwhelming mix of relief and sorrow. Her heart swelled with the realization that, for now, Riven was free from the immediate grip of the curse. Yet, the temporary nature of their recovery gnawed at her, a constant, painful reminder that the darkness was never truly vanquished, merely held at bay. In the quiet moments that followed, as the torches burned low and the enchanted runes dimmed, Kia's inner voice rose in a soft, almost inaudible lament. She wondered, with a pain that cut deeper than any physical wound, whether the cost of their liberation would eventually demand a price far greater than she was prepared to pay. The sacrifice had saved them in the short term, but at what cost to their souls and to the future of the pack? Her thoughts were a tangled web of hope and dread, of fierce determination intertwined with a profound sense of loss. Every beat of her heart echoed with the silent question: was this temporary reprieve the true beginning of their redemption, or merely the calm before an even greater storm? Riven, sensing the turmoil within Kia, reached out to take her hand, a small gesture of unity in the midst of overwhelming uncertainty. In that touch, there was a silent promise. They would face whatever came next together. Yet, as they stood there, bound by the lingering echoes of the curse and the fragile glow of their restored bond, both knew that their journey was far from over. The ritual had given them a moment of respite, a brief window of clarity in a world shadowed by ancient malice, but it had also laid bare the enduring question of sacrifice and the true cost of freedom. In that charged silence, as the night slowly yielded to the first light of dawn, Kia and Riven braced themselves for the challenges ahead. Their temporary recovery was a bittersweet victory, one that brought hope, yet left behind an indelible mark of what they had lost. The curse, though, weakened, still lingered, a spectral presence waiting for its moment to reclaim what had been stolen. And so, with hearts heavy yet resolute, they stepped forward into a future fraught with uncertainty, a future where every victory would be measured not only by the light they embraced, but also by the shadows that clung to their souls. In the quiet aftermath of the ritual, the clearing bore the scars of a battle fought not only with weapons, but with the very essence of fate. The transformation in Riven was both awe-inspiring and heartbreaking. No longer did he wear the wild, tormented visage of the rogue cursed by dark forces. Instead, his features now carried the marks of a soul newly unburdened, yet forever changed. His eyes, once blazing with a feral intensity, now shimmered with a deep, reflective sadness. His body, though still imposing and powerful, seemed to have softened at the edges, as if the brutality of the curse had been washed away, leaving behind a quiet, vulnerable man. But the physical changes were only the beginning of the fallout. The pack reacted in waves. Some members, hardened by years of loyalty to tradition, regarded Riven with a mixture of cautious hope and lingering suspicion. Their faces, weathered by countless battles and marked by the burden of leadership, shifted between expressions of relief and dismay. When Riven stepped forward from the remnants of the ritual's glow, his once roaring presence now tempered. By sorrowful introspection, murmurs rippled through the gathered warriors. "He's free," whispered a veteran with trembling conviction, while others exchanged uncertain glances, as if to question whether freedom had come at too high a price. As the realization of Riven's transformation sank in, the elders of the pack convened in a somber assembly. Their voices, though measured, were heavy with the burden of responsibility. "This is not a simple victory," intoned one elder, his gaze lingering on Riven as if reading a story written in scars and silence. "The curse, though broken, has left behind echoes, a reminder that such power cannot be undone without consequence." Their words echoed across the clearing, resonating with the truth that every act of liberation carries its own toll. For Kia, the cost of her sacrifice unfolded in a torrent of emotions. The decision to sever the fated bond, while it had saved Riven and granted the pack a reprieve from imminent chaos, left her feeling hollow. The connection that had defined her identity for so long was now nothing more than a memory, a void that pulsed with both loss and unfulfilled longing. As she watched Riven's transformation and the pack's mixed reactions, a profound emptiness took hold of her. It was as if, in relinquishing the bond, she had also lost a part of herself, her hope, her dreams, and the promise of a love that had once lit up even the darkest corners of her soul. In the days that followed, the structure of the pack began to shift in subtle yet unmistakable ways. The unity that had once been the bedrock of their community now faced an uncertain future. The rituals and traditions, so carefully preserved through generations, were challenged by the raw aftermath of the ritual. In nightly gatherings around crackling fires, voices that once rang out in confident unison now faltered with doubt. Warriors who had long taken pride in their discipline found themselves questioning the very nature of their existence. "What have we become?" one young fighter murmured as he stared into the dancing flames, a question that resonated with many. Within the pack, internal divisions emerged. The conservative faction, clinging tightly to the old ways, viewed the events as a dangerous deviation, a sign that tampering with ancient curses could lead to unforeseen and possibly disastrous consequences. They argued that Riven's transformation, while seemingly benevolent, might have unleashed residual forces that could fester beneath the surface, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. "Our traditions exist for a reason," declared a respected warrior, his voice edged with both authority and fear. "If we allow our alpha to be swayed by sentimental weakness, who is to say that the darkness won't return stronger than before?" Conversely, there were those who saw Riven's liberation as a beacon of hope, a chance to redefine the pack's future. To them, the sacrifice made by Kia, though devastating, represented the courage to embrace change and challenge the chains of a cursed legacy. They spoke in hushed tones of renewal, of rebuilding the pack not as a relic of past glories, but as a living, breathing community capable of rising above ancient misdeeds. "We must learn from this," a young scout insisted during a council meeting, her eyes alight with a mixture of determination and optimism. "The curse has weakened, and now is our chance to reshape our destiny." Amid these swirling debates, Riven struggled to reconcile his new self with the remnants of his past. His mind was a battlefield, where the shadow of the curse fought desperately against the light of his redemption. The physical changes were evident. There was a new clarity in his gaze, a gentle steadiness in his voice, but internally, he wrestled with lingering doubts. Every time he looked at Kia, he saw the quiet torment in her eyes, the silent question of whether their sacrifice had been worth the cost. Their bond, once a vibrant force of destiny, now flickered with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. For Kia, each day was a relentless reminder of the price of liberation. The emptiness inside her grew like a chasm, echoing with the loss of this connection that had defined her life. In moments of solitude, she would wander to the ancient sites of the pack, sacred groves and weathered stone altars, hoping to find solace in the traditions that had once given her purpose. But the sense of dislocation was overwhelming. Even the familiar landscapes now seemed tainted by the shadow of her sacrifice. She questioned whether the love she had so desperately clung to could ever be restored, or if she was destined to wander forever in a state of longing and regret. The pack itself, once a cohesive unit bound by a shared destiny, now faced a period of reformation and uncertainty. With Riven's transformation and Kia's profound loss casting long shadows, the very structure of their society began to evolve. Meetings that once centered on unified strategies now devolved into heated debates about the future direction of the pack. New alliances formed and old loyalties were tested, setting the stage for an era of transformation that promised both growth and upheaval. In this climate of introspection and cautious optimism, a palpable sense of impending challenge filled the air. The temporary reprieve from the curse, though a significant victory, was merely the opening chapter in a saga that would require each member of the pack to face their inner demons. The cost of Kia's sacrifice was evident not only in the personal void she felt, but also in the subtle, shifting dynamics of a community on the brink of redefining itself. As twilight once again descended over the encampment, the pack gathered, in a silent vigil, a collective moment of reflection and trepidation. In that quiet assembly, the scars of the past mingled with the fragile hope of renewal. Every face told a story of loss, resilience, and the uncertain promise of tomorrow. And in the midst of it all, Kia and Riven stood side by side, their eyes meeting in a shared understanding that, despite the price they had paid, the battle for redemption was far from over. In that solemn twilight, with the cool night air carrying whispers of both ancient curses and new beginnings. The pack braced itself for the challenges ahead. The transformation of Riven and the profound sacrifice of Kia had altered the very fabric of their existence, opening a new, uncharted chapter filled with both promise and peril. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Every victory, every healing moment, would come with its own cost, a reminder that even in the light of redemption, the shadows of the past would never fully fade away. In the wake of the storm, as the first rays of dawn broke through a sky scarred by the night's turmoil, a fragile calm settled over the pack's encampment. The tumult that had shattered old bonds and left deep, unhealable wounds had begun to give way to the tender stirrings of renewal. It was in this quiet aftermath that Kia and Riven, still bearing the scars of their recent ordeals, embarked on a journey to rebuild what had once bound them, a connection now transformed by loss, pain, and the hard-won wisdom of survival. Kia Zhao, heart, once heavy with the emptiness of sacrifice, slowly began to thaw as she and Riven tentatively explored the new contours of their relationship. The ritual that had broken the ancient curse had not only altered Riven's very being, but had also marked the end of a chapter defined by torment and despair. In its place, a subtle yet persistent promise of hope emerged. Riven's eyes, which had once burned with the wild intensity of a cursed spirit, now shone with a tempered light, an expression of vulnerability mixed with a rekindled desire to protect and cherish the pack. Their first steps toward healing were quiet and unassuming. In the stillness of early morning, when the camp was bathed in a soft, forgiving light, Kia and Riven found themselves alone amid the whispering pines and dew-laden grass. They began to talk, not the heated exchanges of the past, but gentle conversations that revealed long-buried fears and tender aspirations. Kia spoke of her loneliness and the deep longing to be truly seen, while Riven admitted the weight of his own regrets and the anguish of being consumed by a curse he never wished for. In these vulnerable moments, forgiveness blossomed, a silent, unspoken promise to both themselves and each other that, despite the inevitable losses, there remained a possibility for redemption. The pack, too, sensed the shift. Though the wounds of recent events had not yet fully healed, there was a growing awareness that the old ways could no longer be the only guide. In hushed gatherings around dying embers, leaders and warriors alike began to discuss the future not in terms of rigid tradition, but with a cautious optimism about forging a new path. The once unyielding hierarchy of the pack was softening, allowing for empathy and understanding to seep into decisions that affected every member's fate. It was as if the storm had cleansed not only the curse but also the hardened hearts of those who had long clung to outdated dogma. Riven, embracing his newfound clarity, took decisive steps to mend his fractured leadership. He initiated small yet symbolic acts of reconciliation, extending a hand to those who had doubted him, engaging in earnest dialogues with his closest advisors, and even participating in communal rituals that celebrated unity rather than division. Each act, however modest, served as a stitch in the mending fabric of the pack's collective spirit. His transformation was no longer just about the physical or even the mystical. It was about the reclamation of his humanity and the reaffirmation of his commitment to his people. For Kia, the journey toward rebuilding was equally challenging. The sacrifices she had made left an indelible void, a constant reminder of the love and connection she had willingly relinquished for the sake of the pack. Yet, in that void, she began to discover the seeds of a new identity. She learned to honor her past pain without letting it dictate her future. In quiet moments of reflection by the ancient stone altars, she found solace in the knowledge that the love she had shared with Riven was not entirely lost. It had merely evolved into something more resilient, something that could endure even when scarred. Together, Kia and Riven embarked on a series of healing rituals, both old and newly conceived, designed not only to strengthen their bond, but also to weave a protective tapestry for the entire pack. These rituals were intimate affairs, often held beneath the canopy of stars, or in secluded groves where the earth hummed with ancient magic. They involved the gentle blending of shared memories, symbolic gestures of forgiveness, and promises made with trembling voices in the quiet hours of the night. Each ritual was a step toward building a bridge over the chasm of their past, a promise that even the deepest wounds could, in time, be transformed into scars that told stories of survival and hope. The process was not without its setbacks. There were days when old fears resurfaced, when the specter of the curse loomed large and threatened to overwhelm the fragile progress they had made. In these moments, the support of the pack proved invaluable. Warriors who had once been skeptical now offered quiet words of encouragement. Elders, with wisdom etched into every wrinkle, reminded them that healing was a slow, painstaking process. The pack's gradual shift toward unity was marked by small victories, a shared meal, a moment of laughter, a collective gesture of solidarity that reinforced the new bonds being formed. As seasons changed, the new connection between Kaya and Riven grew into a beacon of hope for the entire community. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of sacrifice and tempered by the trials of their recent past, became a living testament to the transformative power of love and forgiveness. While the loss of the old bond could never be entirely undone, its absence allowed for the emergence of a connection that was richer and more nuanced, a bond built on mutual understanding, respect, and a shared determination to protect their future. In this evolving landscape, the pack found itself at the threshold of a new era. No longer shackled by the rigidity of ancient curses and traditions, they began to reimagine their collective identity. The spirit of unity, once buried under layers of fear and discord, now stirred within each member, inviting them to embrace change. The resilience and hope that emerged from Kia and Riven's journey resonated throughout the camp, igniting a quiet revolution that promised not just survival, but renewal. Under the ever-watchful eyes of the ancient trees, with the soft murmur of the wind carrying tales of both loss and rebirth, the pack embraced its new beginning. Kia and Riven, standing side by side, had not only rekindled a love that had once seemed doomed by darkness, but they had also become symbols of the pack's capacity to evolve and overcome. Their journey was far from over. Each step forward, a reminder that the path to redemption was paved with both tears and triumph. But in their unity, the promise of a brighter, more compassionate future shone like a guiding star. And so, amid the gentle glow of twilight and the hopeful murmur of a united community, a new chapter began. A chapter of rebuilding, of healing, and of a love that, despite all the losses, had found a way to rise from the ashes. As the first light of a new dawn crept over the horizon, the pack gathered in a solemn circle at the ancient stone circle, a place that had witnessed countless generations rise and fall. The air was crisp with the promise of change, and every member, from the youngest warrior to the oldest elder, felt the weight of history pressing gently upon their hearts. In that sacred space, the pack took a moment to reflect on their tumultuous past, the betrayals, the curses, and the sacrifices that had carved deep wounds into their collective soul. The memories of missteps and heartache were not shunned, but honored as vital lessons of resilience. Riven, standing tall yet humbled by the trials of his transformation, addressed the assembled pack with a steady, reflective voice. "We have known darkness," he began, his eyes sweeping across familiar faces that bore their own marks of loss and hardship. "Our past is etched in every scar, every tear we have shed. But from these very wounds, we have learned the true value of unity, sacrifice, and the strength of our bond." Kia, whose journey of pain and renewal had become a beacon of hope, nodded as she recalled the bitter moments when the curse nearly tore them apart. "We have witnessed the price of letting old ways dictate our fate," she said softly, her voice trembling with both sorrow and determination. "But now, as we stand here together, we embrace not just our legacy, but the promise of a future that we create with our own hands. In that gathering, the pack's elders unveiled ancient records and heirlooms, symbols of a time when the pack was bound by rigid traditions and uncompromising rules. These relics, once seen as relics of a bygone era, now served as powerful reminders of the mistakes made and the pain endured. Each piece told a story of lost trust and shattered dreams, yet also of the perseverance that had carried them through the darkest times. One elder, his voice resonant with years of wisdom, recounted the story of the first Alpha, a leader whose ambition and pride had sown the seeds of a curse that would haunt the pack for generations. His error was not merely a failure in leadership, he explained, but a betrayal of the very values that held our community together. Let his mistakes remind us that true strength lies not in domination, but in compassion and unity. His words, echoing across the circle, stirred an overwhelming sense of accountability and hope among those present. The atmosphere shifted as a new vision for the future began to take shape. With the curse broken and the old bond transformed, a cautious optimism spread through the pack. Leaders and warriors alike gathered to discuss the path forward, a future where the old rules would be re-examined and reformed. No longer would they be bound by the shackles of past transgressions. Instead, they envisioned a society founded on mutual respect, shared sacrifice, and the enduring spirit of renewal. In one impassioned speech, a young warrior, whose eyes sparkled with the fire of conviction, declared, "We must not allow the mistakes of our ancestors to dictate our destiny. Today, we stand at the threshold of a new era. Let us build a future where every member of this pack is valued, where our decisions are guided by empathy and our actions by the lessons of our past." Her words, filled with raw emotion and unwavering determination, resonated with the entire gathering, sparking murmurs of agreement and tears of both joy and regret. For Kia and Riven, the journey toward rebuilding their connection was deeply personal, a process of rediscovering each other amidst the ruins of what once was. They began by revisiting the sacred grounds where they had first forged their bond, this time with the intention of healing rather than holding on to what was lost. In quiet moments away from the watchful eyes of the pack, they shared memories of their struggles and celebrated the small victories that had brought them to this point. Every whispered conversation and tender touch became a testament to their renewed commitment, a commitment not only to each other, but to the future of the entire pack. Their love, tested by fire and tempered by sacrifice, now glowed with a new intensity. A soft, persistent light that promised rebirth even in the aftermath of pain. Together they envisioned a future where the pack could thrive, free from the shadows of ancient curses and rigid dogmas. A future where every challenge would be met with collective strength and every loss would serve as a stepping stone toward a more compassionate society. As the morning matured, the pack began to implement the changes that had been long overdue. New rituals were introduced, rites that celebrated both individual contributions and communal resilience. Meetings that once echoed with the bitterness of past grievances transformed into sessions of shared vision, where every voice was encouraged and every opinion respected. The elders, recognizing the need for evolution, opened their hearts to change, ensuring that the wisdom of the past was preserved but not allowed to stifle progress. In this evolving landscape, the symbols of the old ways were reinterpreted. The ancient relics and runes, once feared as harbingers of doom, were now embraced as historical markers, a reminder of how far they had come and a beacon for where they wished to go. The pack's physical spaces, from the sacred stone circle to the communal fire pit, were revitalized with vibrant decorations and new inscriptions that celebrated unity, healing, and hope. Amid this transformative process, emotions surged like a tide. Many pack members, who had endured years of fear and uncertainty, found solace in the shared commitment to a better future. There was laughter mingled with tears, an outpouring of gratitude for second chances, and a palpable excitement for the possibilities that lay ahead. Every step forward was a collective victory, a proof that even the deepest wounds could, with time and care, give rise to something beautiful. Kia, standing at the heart of this reborn community, felt a profound sense of peace mixed with lingering melancholy. The sacrifices of the past had left an indelible mark on her soul, but they had also paved the way for a future of possibility. In her eyes, the legacy of the pack was no longer a chain of curses and regrets, but a tapestry of lessons learned, of resilience forged in adversity, and of hope reborn from the ashes of despair. As the day progressed, a renewed spirit of unity and purpose enveloped the pack. The ancient voices of their forebears, once echoing with admonition, now served as gentle reminders of the cost of neglect and the power of redemption. With every heartfelt conversation, every shared meal, and every act of kindness, the pack moved closer to a future where the bonds of legacy and love intertwined to create a new chapter in their storied history. In that triumphant moment, as the pack looked toward a horizon filled with promise, the shared understanding was clear. The past, with all its pain and beauty, had shaped them, but it would not define them. Together, they would continue the journey, a journey marked by hope, renewal, and the unbreakable will to build a future where every sacrifice, every tear, would contribute to the enduring legacy of the pack. As dusk settled over the transformed pack, an air of uncertainty mingled with the promise of a new beginning. The events of recent days, of curses broken, bonds reformed, and painful sacrifices made, had left a profound mark on every heart. Yet even as the pack embraced a renewed spirit of unity and hope, unresolved conflicts and lingering mysteries cast long, enigmatic shadows across the horizon. The future, as it always does, remained an unwritten tapestry, one that beckoned with both tantalizing possibility and the quiet dread of the unknown. In the center of the communal gathering, beneath an ancient oak whose gnarled branches reached toward the starry sky, Kia and Riven stood side by side. Their eyes, reflecting the many battles fought and the tender victories won, seemed to speak a silent language of mutual understanding. Though their journey had brought them closer than ever before, the echo of past struggles still resonated within them, a reminder that even the most courageous hearts bear scars. The mate bond, once a source of both profound connection and agonizing pain, now shimmered with a fragile radiance. It was a bond that had been reborn from sacrifice and tempered by the relentless passage of time, yet its future remained shrouded in uncertainty. Around them, members of the pack gathered in a quiet, reflective circle. Some wore expressions of cautious optimism, while others bore the weight of lingering skepticism. The elders, with wisdom carved into their weathered faces, exchanged solemn glances that hinted at the lessons of history and the trials that still lay ahead. There was an unspoken acknowledgement that the victory of breaking the curse, though monumental, was only the first step in a longer journey, a journey that would demand resilience, adaptability, and a constant readiness to face both external threats and the internal struggles that defined their shared legacy. As the gentle murmur of voices and the crackle of the fading bonfire filled the cool night air, Kia stepped forward. Her gaze swept across the assembled faces, each one a testament to the enduring spirit of the pack, and she spoke with a voice both tender and resolute. "We have come so far, enduring darkness and despair, only to rise again in hope and unity," she began. "Our past is a mosaic of pain and sacrifice, but it has also given us the strength to redefine who we are. Though our journey is far from complete and many challenges remain unresolved, we now stand at the threshold of a new era, one where our bonds are not dictated by ancient curses, but forged by our determination to overcome adversity." Her words, filled with heartfelt emotion, stirred something deep within the hearts of everyone present. Riven, his eyes soft with gratitude and quiet sorrow, nodded in agreement. Every sacrifice we have made, every tear shed, has been a testament to our love, our unity, and our unwavering commitment to each other and to our pack," he added. "Yet, as we look toward the future, we must remain vigilant. There are still forces that seek to undermine our hard-won peace and unresolved conflicts that could challenge the harmony we have fought so dearly to achieve." A brief, reflective silence fell over the gathering as the crackling fire and rustling leaves seemed to echo the uncertainty of the coming days. Then, with a gentle but earnest smile, Kia continued, "We invite you, our cherished audience, to join us in this journey. What do you think the future holds for our pack? How do you envision the challenges we have yet to face? And what sacrifices might we have to make to truly overcome the darkness? Your thoughts, your insights, and your predictions are part of this evolving story. Share your ideas in the comments below and join the conversation as we build this legacy together." Her call to action was more than a simple invitation. It was a heartfelt plea for connection, a recognition that the story of the pack was not theirs alone, but belonged to all who dared to dream of a brighter, more compassionate future. In that moment, the boundaries between storyteller and listener blurred, creating a community united by shared hope and the timeless quest for redemption. As the night deepened, the pack dispersed into smaller groups, each engaging in quiet, passionate discussions about what had transpired and what might come next. Some speculated about the return of old enemies, while others imagined new alliances being forged from the lessons learned through hardship. The uncertainty of the future was no longer a source of fear, but a canvas upon which endless possibilities could be painted. A canvas waiting for the contributions of every heart and mind that believed in the transformative power of love and unity. In the glow of the rising moon, Riven and Kia found a moment of solace amid the gentle hum of renewed life. Though the scars of the past remained, a testament to battles fought and sacrifices made, they now served as reminders of the pack's indomitable spirit. The journey ahead promised to be fraught with challenges, but it also held the potential for growth, healing, and the reimagining of traditions long held sacred. With each shared smile, each determined glance, they affirmed that even the deepest wounds could eventually give way to new beginnings. As the story of the pack continued to unfold, it carried with it timeless messages that true love often demands sacrifice, that unity is forged in the crucible of adversity, and that every ending is but a prelude to a new chapter. For those who have followed this tale, the open-ended conclusion is an invitation, a call to ponder, to predict, and to participate in the ever-evolving narrative of destiny. So as we close this chapter and leave the future tantalizingly unwritten, we ask you, what do you think lies ahead for Kia, Riven, and our resilient pack? How will they navigate the uncertain terrain of new challenges, and what sacrifices might they be called upon to make in the quest for true redemption? Leave your thoughts and predictions in the comments below. Share this story with friends who believe in the transformative power of hope and unity. Together, let's continue this journey, a journey that reminds us that even in the darkest times, love and determination light the way toward a future filled with promise. Thank you for being part of this adventure. Until next time, keep your hearts open and your spirits unyielding, because the story of the pack and the legacy of our shared humanity is still being written.